you could probably go ahead. I just realized because they're both on Mac, so the one you guys will probably have to. Octavia, are you running on a Windows or a MacBook? Mac, okay. Because Macs come with Java pre-installed in it, they probably won't have a problem. But well, and you're already all set up, right? So just you two, we're probably going to want to get you up on. Oh, you're all good. So do you have Java? I guess there's nothing. Okay. So maybe just to find out what versions everyone's running. So to do that, if you open a terminal window and type in Java version, we'll just be able to get a. I'm coming right now. Your name is? Youngster. I'm JS. We're in the class for a week. And then after that, someone's going to take over. For the last 2 weeks. Let me just go at the notes. What's that? Oh, yeah, it's right over here. Yeah, if you want, you can update it, but 1.6 will be adequate. Perfect. Oh, thank you for opening the door, by the way. I actually thought they were still back there, but they're gone. Octavia? Do you know what version you're running of Java? Very big. All right. So basically, this is a link to download the JDK to install them on your system. You guys are all set already. The only thing we're gonna check for Windows systems is the Java home variable. Do you guys know how variables work in Windows through the properties? Here, I'll show you. This will only apply to the Windows system. So I'm actually logging onto this Windows computer, so that just because I'm on a MacBook. So to get to that command window that you have, you could just echo the variable to see if it exists. So you would just type in echo, and Java home. And if that comes back with something, then you know you have the variable set. Yeah, so if you could just run that, just run the echo, and then you'll just see if it's set right. Mine's actually not set right. Sometimes when you install it, it'll ask if you want to set the variable, and I'll set the variable for you. What's your variable? Oh, that's all right. I'll put that down for now. Is anyone familiar with Eclipse, the IDE for developing Java applications? You are, I know that, right? I'm using Okay. So you just know what it is. So that works. You just know what it is, so that's good. Yeah. Does anyone else, like, they probably heard of it, or? Yeah. Okay, so there's a little bit of, basically, oh, you did? Well, that's really interesting. What were your responsibilities? Oh, interesting. Okay, so the IDE is a software tool that provides comprehensive facilities for software development, and there's different types of IDEs. There's Eclipse, and there's also NetBeans, JDeveloper, and one that's more focused on Android, like Android Studio. I don't think that released its first stable version, but it's something you'll probably might see in the future. But it's one of the most used IDEs. It's open source, so people can keep on developing and adding extensions to it and enhance its abilities. So there's like connections where you can add in for more web development, or if you want to work in Python or PHP. So it's really versatile in that aspect. And so I guess we're going to all go ahead and download it to make sure you have enough fun. Do you know what version you're running of Eclipse? Okay, that's good. We'll all be using Eclipse Luna. Just that one is one of the most stable releases. So for the link, that's going to be the link, but I'm going to come around to make sure you guys are all good too. Larry has it. There's actually, what I'll do is, if you have Skype, if you give me your YouTube, you can have it all. Actually, and then I'll give you the Dropbox, and it actually has the PowerPoint presentation, so you can, oh no, it's good sit there, I'll be bringing the keyboard. And you can go ahead and add everyone in the group to your Skype. Well, did I close that group conversation? I don't see it open. Let's recreate it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm still pending the request from YouTube. On Skype, it says a little message with pending request. I don't know. I'm missing one person. Okay. Huh? Well, I'm missing one person. Trying to figure out who it is.
I'm still working on logging in.
Oh, okay, you're still logging into it?
Yeah, I just installed.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, once you do, I'll send you the link to Dropbox. You can catch up with the slides at least. All right. Sorry about that. Let's get back to the presentation. Basically, when you work in Eclipse, you have a workspace. When you first open it up, as you notice, it's asking where do you want it, what workspace do you want to work in. You can create, no matter what, any name, when you place in your hard drive, you want to create that workspace. One thing is, once you start setting preferences, then you might want to export your workspace in certain settings, like so maybe comment, a certain way you comment, whatnot, but that's something we'll do later on to get more of a custom, same kind of workspace and carry the settings around. It's a directory where Eclipse keeps files related to your current work. Eclipse also keeps the preferences related to the current work in that workspace. Eclipse requires a workspace directory to start Eclipse, and by using different workspaces, you can keep your preferences separate for different projects. Prospective. Eclipse provides a set of perspectives for different kind of work within a workspace. So depending on what you're doing, you'll have a different workspace, and you can switch between them and add certain workspaces to it. I'm going to actually show you where the workspace is. Let me get Eclipse open. So I'm going to open that. Maybe too, we'll talk quickly about the different areas of the workspace. It's going to look a little different on the Mac and Windows side. So if you have a question of where something is, just ask. So on the left, you have like okay, so depending on your workspace, my workspace currently is on the top right. Well, on the top right, there's like a little button, and it's right now mine says Java, but you might have different buttons depending on the kind of workspace you're working with. Basically, when you switch between them, like I just switched to Java Enterprise Development, so the different areas in your different windows change depending on what the perspective you have. There's a lot of different perspectives. Someone that's a debugger might have a different perspective than someone's a developer and whatnot. So that's just good to know, and here's some examples of different perspectives. We'll maybe be working with the Java and the Java browsing perspective and debugging. So I'm going to add that button. So as you can tell, the debugging probably has a lot more for debugging certain things. So if you all can create a workspace, we're going to go ahead and start just the Hello application. Yes. Oh. Sometimes you can't see like the root directory, so what you probably want to do is and oh yeah, actually you might use that. If you go to one Try the better. And then you might want to keep the top. You have a lot of things going on. Look at the way it is, very nicely organized and the way you ground. Whereas Java itself, right, you work when you have that part, and when you're debugging. It just basically the way that you help can make it work. Okay, so you probably upside down half. Yeah. Okay, and now, if you look at it at the regular here, and you see the little function, I'll write that thing. Yeah, exactly. You'll get the half, and you put browse. That one, and you'll get it. We have a browse, debugging, more of a debug. And it's only on one other one you get that version. Yeah. All right. So I'm under the regular Java perspective. So we're going to just basically create a hello world application and get it running, make sure everything's running good. So the first thing we would do is create a new Java project. So in the top left corner, I think it's File New under Windows. On that, just go to the little plus and Java project. Yeah. There's different types of projects you can create. If you created just a project and not a Java project, you won't have the availability of working with Java. You can have other types, and as you add extensions, there's ability to add different types of projects. So with the Java project, it'll include the Java files they need to run it. So if you go ahead and create Java project, it'll come up with this little window. Oh, the top left corner, Java project. So first you want to make sure you're on the right discussion. You'll go to Java. Once you're there, you'll see the window that looks the same, so that you can. So yes, that's the perspective. That's a new perspective. That's over here, top left. But you can also go to the bottom as well. A lot of times it's also way here. So from there, you can just choose a window. So if you actually type in project, for example, you'll get some samples that we have. And that's just a regular project. This Java project is one small. A regular project basically has this file that you're going to review, and maybe you might have other projects inside. This is the Java project right there, and then hit next. And you're going to get that one here. Okay, so for the project, you could basically have any name. I'll call mine my project. You can use the default location. The default location is going to be under your workspace. Now here, the next one where it says the Java Runtime Environment, JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment. And depending which ones you have installed, you'll be able to select a different one. So I think one person has Java 1.6. Is that you? No, you have 1.8. And then for the project layout, this is basically going to talk about what structure you want your Java file in. Whether you have a source folder and different classes inside that source folder. That's basically the separation of your files. We're going to all just create a separate folder for sources and class files. And then you can hit next. We'll talk more about the screen later on. But basically where you would add libraries and certain projects. But for now, we can just go to finish. And you'll have your project name with the directory of source and the Java environment that's included. If you were to create just a regular project, you wouldn't have that library with Java included in it. So that's basically just setting up the structure. There's actually no classes or anything yet to run inside of it. So that's what we'll do next. But I just want to make sure everyone's good. Yeah. Okay, did you I'll add you, or did you get the Dropbox link? No. Okay, let me send that to you. Oh, there you are. Octavia? How are you doing? Okay, good. So do you understand about the buttons and the different perspectives? Okay, perfect. And you were able to successfully create the project? Okay, let's go back to slide. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and create the class for Hello World. So what we'll do is we'll go to, again, it's going to be like a file new. So the top left corner, I think it's going to be a little different on the Windows. But you would click the class. So then you'll have a dialog window. Now for the source folder, you're going to want to select that project that you created previously. You're going to want to select that for this is where you want to keep the source. What's that? Oh, okay. And now for package, we're going to just leave it the default package. Whereas if you actually specify the name, usually people use their web address to separate their files. So because domains are more unique, that way it allows classes to be, if one person has my object and another person has my object, using a package would be able to have those two work in the same environment because it would go by the package name. We'll talk more again about that. So for the name, we'll just do a basic hello world. Now remember to get the capitalization correct too, capital H, capital W. Classes have the name where it starts with a capital. Now if you select the little icon that says public static void main, it'll create a method for you, which is basically like a default method. As soon as that class runs, it knows to run that method. It's the signature, you'll hear a lot about it. It's a signature that's specific for the main default function. Now, if you don't select it, you can still go ahead and add it and type it in manually. If that's all good and you hit finish, you'll get your first skeleton with class. So just want to make sure everyone's there. It makes it get more difficult, like the view of it. Okay, so then now, basically, because it's the default method, we want to say what's going to happen. There's a command, it's called system.out.print, and there's two, print or print line, if you have the ln, or you don't have the ln. The difference is if you have ln, it's going to print with a line caret at the end. If you don't have the ln, it's going to be stuck next to each other. So for the string, you would use a double quote, and that signifies a string type. So if you go ahead and type that line, and remember capitalization is important, but it's going to be system.out dot print line hello world. And one of the great parts about Eclipse is if you actually start typing system and then dot, it's going to come with the whole list. So you can save yourself from typing by just hitting the down arrow key, or maybe the beginning letter, like O, and then enter, and then dot, and you can use the keyboard to help you get to where you need to get. Because the application is so simple, I'm not giving you the actual code, but having you guys type it. Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to show that when you type it, that you get a shortcut that come up as you type it. Yeah. Yeah, you just click or you just type. So dot, and then that's the print line. T, so then yeah, that's what we want. Enter, and then you enter. It helps you type quicker. And if for some reason you don't use the sign, dot, and then you don't see it, you just hit control A. It'll actually go to the prompt. And well, one thing I didn't mention is the indentation. Try to follow basically what happens is as you go, it's nested. So for like the function, everything inside is going to be indented. For default, 4 spaces. So as you notice, there's indentation for the method public static void name, and then another indentation for everything that's inside. So if you want to indent. And if you actually select them, select both lines, now hit tab. You'll actually do it. Oh. There's also a button. So if it's going to, so what I was saying to G is that if you indent on you select the line, let's say you want an indentation, so you can select the different lines that you want, and then just hit tab. So if you ever want to like increase the indentation for, let's say, those 3 lines, you just select them, hit tab, and it'll move them over. But there's also a button too, which is at the top. Everyone good to go? So then if you hit the run button, you can actually run it. So if you see the little run button and you run as Java application, you'll get your first application response. You can always run, because you have save. It depends on your preference, but basically, if Notice too that it's hello world, it's hello right after, because of print. And if you did print line, which ends in an ln, you're actually adding ln to the print. Or maybe go to like, right there, you actually have a line. So if you instead of being all the same line, it's going to be, oh yeah, it is. I mean, you can say what you want. So you just say, kind of nice. Because I think we're going to eventually be able to put small cartridges, and that way you can make it, because if it's easier for you to read it a certain way, then you can go ahead and change it. Exactly. The cartridges are here, we also have 80 characters just to screen. So each time all our functions, I'm working on It's like the default. Basically, when you install it on the store, and it's a lot of one really nice thing is you can use a code formatting. So if it ends up getting all dirty and stuff, you can have it all format and it'll be all clean. Yeah. Helps a lot when you're turning something in because they'll clean it all up and tell you where you didn't add comments and stuff. There's a lot of advanced features you can do there. Yeah, most of the time it. Yeah. Exactly. One thing actually has it there. But yeah, it's just because people with the default settings, a lot of people are working in the same environment, they keep it at the. But again, you're free to change it if you find something that is easier to read. Octavia? How are you doing? Just want to make sure you're all good. Got Hello World? Perfect. All right. Are we all good to go? How are you? Okay. We'll just catch you up. All right, what is Java? Java is object-oriented programming language with basic syntax similar to C++. It was developed by James Gosling at Sun Microsystems. Actually, in 1991 was when it was developed by Sun Microsystems, and it was the Green Project, and they called it Oak, because they'd look out the window and there was a big giant oak tree, so that's how they named it, and then basically they changed it over because they drink a lot of coffee to Java. So I mean, it's not anything sophisticated in the naming. But the one thing about it is that was important was that you can run it, create it on any like a Mac or Windows or other Linux or any other system. And then once you compile the code, compile it and create like a binary file, which is like ones and zeros. and then that runs on a virtual machine, and that virtual machine is different for different operating systems. But the nice part about it is once that implementation is in place, you can run it on any system. So it's basically write once, run anywhere. This is actually just a chart of where the time frame from its first release to its graduation to JDK 1.0, JDK 1.1, and then 1998 they actually changed the name to J2 Standard Edition. I can go into details about the different items that were added, but I think you guys are going to learn about that along the way. So J2 SE 1.3 in 2000, 2002 J2 SE 1.4, and a lot of times you may get confused because the naming changed along the way and people call it different things for J2 EE for enterprise development. SE and EE differ, and basically the SE stands for Standard Edition, so it includes what mainly you guys will be working with. When we get into more EE, will be more enterprise, so it's certain frameworks and APIs that add to make it EE. So J2 SE 5.0 and actually 1.5 in 2004. In 2004, they decided that the naming scheme, the 1.4, because they were increasing from 1.2 to 1.3 to 1.4, at that point they wanted to make it Java 5, or J2 SE 5.0. And that's when 2006 when Oracle bought Sun. So it's no longer owned by Sun Microsystems. And 2006, J2 SE, 2010, Sun Visit, 2011, J2 SE 7, and most recently, J2 SE. For references, we'll mainly be using, there's the main reference for Java that's online at docs.oracle.com. And depending on the version you're working with, it'll either be 6, 7, 8, and over there you'll have the API overview and more details about anything you want to work with, like certain string methods or those different details. A book that's recommended is Java in 21 Days, Teach Yourself, and Head First Java. You have that. So I think a lot of the content was created and used based on the book. How does Java work? Basically, you type the code into a text editor, and with like Notepad, Notepad++, and it's just basic text like you saw in Eclipse. But there's more sophisticated Notepad editors, like one that's popular, Sublime Text. And it's not the full IDE environment like Eclipse, but it gets you to where you want to, where it helps out. So in certain areas, when you forget what a certain function call is, it'll help you out and make it easier to type that. Now that code can't run by itself, you have to compile it. So you basically have to take that code and say, okay, I want to turn it into a class. So the actual extension of the text file is like .java, but then when you run it and compile it, it turns to .class. And that's the binary code that you can work with and import to different systems. So you need that text file, create it, and then get it compiled, and then you can run it. So there's like two commands that you work with. After you create your text file, you want to compile it, and then you want to run it. And I think we're going to take a step back and try to just create the same class, but this time use the inner JDK to actually compile the code and run it. Something that if you didn't have the IDE, you'd have to do. So to do that, to make it easier for you guys, we'll just copy this. So if you want to copy all your hello world text, and then we're going to find something to note. What is that? This is Sublime Text. It's just like Notepad. So if you have Windows with your Notepad, yes, that works. You'll be working with Eclipse, but I want to show you this so you can kind of maybe get a better understanding of what's happening behind the background when you work in the Eclipse. You're hitting the Run button, but it's actually doing stuff for you. So if you actually just go and you're going to type in everything and paste it into a blank Notepad document. So that's new. And we're going to want to find a nice place to store it on our systems. So find a folder that will be a good place for you to work it. So I basically created a Hello World folder, and now I'm going to save my text file where I copied and pasted everything into that folder. So what I'm going to do is File, Save As, and I'm going to put a name, and I want to make sure that my name matches exactly as the class name. So if I was to type Hello World, that would be incorrect, because it doesn't exactly match Hello World with a capital H. So you want to make sure that you get the capitalization correct. And you want to add the extension, and the extension is going to be .java. And you want to put your location. So I just want to make sure everyone's on the right track.
Oh, no, but we can copy and paste it from there. Oh. Yeah, they're showing you errors. Yeah. So yeah, that's all. And then you just want to save it. I'll give you this. notice that the Java file, the text file is in Java, and once you compile it, it turns to a file. And then you want your, I don't know if you want that location, but if you wanted a more specific folder, you want to or something like that. So you have that, okay, and you save it, and you know where you save it? Okay. Okay, you're very cool, but if you just do this Java app, Java, editor, you can pull the name of the file, it's actually a file. But I'll show you that. See, what it's doing is it's asking for the name and it's adding the rich text format extension to it. But if you just save it, then you should get the, like that, is that what you did? Oh, it's automatically going to do that. Maybe it's just because it makes maybe a different. Yeah. But you know what, if you actually don't do it right here, you actually, you actually know, you could work around that. If you know where the location is, where it is. Where the Bible is. Oh, right there, so now you actually change it there. I told you, change that name there to there. I'm gonna get that. That's the word around here. Although, I mean, it's not soft, working today, you're always getting hard. But again, you guys aren't gonna be using this, just to kind of give you an idea of how, if people put down with the eye, they can't use all the functionality that it has. They actually have to compile it and then do it. There you go. Okay, so here, this is the Eclipse project. Give me the table. Oh, you just create any book. This is how Eclipse does process structure. What you really wanted to do is, we're trying to go back, and when they get how Eclipse, how you have to actually take one of those and have to use the compiler to work with the term. So if you get, we're gonna go back to, we're gonna look at that. How are you? Okay, you're pretty much. Yeah. And you ran it and you remember it? Okay. So basically, you'll have that text file and you're gonna.
Yeah, I replaced, I replaced,
Okay, that's you. Have you guys computer? Now, for some learning projects, I do want to learn my document, wherever you want, to make it separate. Well, actually, if you don't want to, take, if you don't have, if we're gonna try, we're trying to show how to balance it. And then data.
So now we're going to want to be able to access that from the terminal. If you notice, like for me, I saved it, once I saved it in a Java file with Sublime, I changed all the three colors to make it easier to read. So even though it's just a text editor, it has basic functionality to make it easier for you to code. And it has extensions for a lot of different type of files, and it's a pretty popular, what's that? Sublime Text. I don't know why it's called that though. So, now we're going to want to open up the terminal. Is everyone comfortable, like, know what the Windows terminal is? And are they comfortable with moving around, changing directories? And both the Windows terminal and they're both terminals are very much alike. For, I'm in the Mac, I'm going to change the directory and go to my directory. Hit enter. So I'm currently in my directory. And if I hit, oops, well, I'll see my file there. So I just want to see if everyone can get their terminal in the directory that file is.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That line. Okay, so then you're good to go here. Oh, you're here. You just want to move. Oh, yeah. That's okay. You would create a record, that's the registry you're in, and your doc, you're not in the document yet. So you want to change directory document. And then you have to start typing it, and there's two D's, you can't just tap it. You put D-O, and then D-O-C, because it's the only doc element that you just have. That was put into the document. Then you can enter it, and you see where you currently are, list again, and you should see your file. But it's RTF, and RTF is rich text format, and you actually don't want that format. So, there was a problem when you look at text, just the text edit data text format. So if you use a different one, that doesn't take that rich text format, you would be okay. For now, just to get around it, you go use Finder to find the file. Now you're, well, you have it, you're yeah. But there's a preference, I forgot, let's go to government protection, preferences. Oh, yes, you select
now you'll see the extension plus, you'll see your hard drive too, when you want to get to your hard drive. I'll actually just never go up. Well, I think when you go all my fun. Oh, sure, you got that. Okay, there's another setting in the system preferences, change it. You see the hard drive? If you look on your hard drive, you want to get to it. Because I think it's defined clips, like, clips is actually. Great. Yeah, I was actually looking for it, but we're all good, you know. But there, yeah, here's your box. So, click on it slowly, double click on it slowly. So now you can see the RTF. If you click on it slowly, like, and just change that RTF. So you hit LS. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, well, I'll show you this. So now you're going to want to check in. So the compiler, there's two pieces of Java, the Java of JDK. There was the compiler and the regular Java. Java, if you run itself, it's going to give you all the commands for Java. But if you run JavaX, it's going to be the compiler. Java is used to actually run bytecode. So you can run bytecode java.class or main, whatever the name is, .class files by using Java. But to get it to that type of format, you got to use the Java compiler, so being JavaX, and then you're going to want to write the name of the file. So, for example, hello world. Make sure you include the extension Java, and once you run that, you're going to either get no response, showing that something happened, or if you get an error, it means something was wrong in your file. Once you run it and you get no errors, and it looks like something happened, if you hit ls again, you should see a Java class and a Java file in the class. Okay, it's bringing out. Right. This is where you run it. Right here, right? So you've got Java. All right. So you have to type in Java, and then compiler, and then the file. If you actually write to the Java and you hit enter, they'll tell you what your different commands and what you can. There's a little too much information. They'll tell you what you can put in and what you can't. So you want to actually use that command, and then the name of the file, which will be hello world, and then with the extension. Exactly. You have to hit ls sometimes to see what the name of the file is again. It's Java. Yeah, Java. Enter. No error. Oh, yeah, problem. Yeah. Okay. Well, not a problem.
So let's open your file back up. Your text edit. Maybe text edit, maybe it's adding a bunch of spaces. You know, people do that. Yeah, do you have a call that you work with for Mac?
What's that? Oh, it's free, it's free. What's that? Oh, yeah, Vim. Yeah, if you use Vim, you could probably, you just don't get, it's really a generic for Vim. Yeah, I'm wondering if everyone's going to run into the same problem.
Do you want to set it down? To use that as a text edit for the next slide? Okay. Okay. Because it's basically just understand the process involved in compiling. You're going to be using Eclipse. So you're not going to do this, but just be aware and see how it goes. And it'll be the same thing for you. Just because it's a rich set file and it's adding all these line breaks and information to a file that you don't need. It's plain text. So it's basically once you run the compiler, you're gonna so basically after you run that file and you go and
So without the C and just run Java, and then the name of the file without the extension, you would get the output of your application, which would be the hello world. And the basic core of that was to show you how it runs without Eclipse.
yeah. And if you need there and the dot Java. No, because this is your workspace for us. So the same amount. And that's going to be probably going to work with eight. Yeah. And it helps with the color. So then we would just like the demo. Yeah, if you actually now if you go here, you just run the same stuff. You're going to do that, and you also can add that. Also, no. And now do the same thing, but minus C. So the Java. This is space hello without an extension. And now this isn't like a lot of this is the command for running the system driver, so and it's going to say back to just what we have. So you're good, you understand it. And based on this is, if you don't have a license development requirement, you would get around like a few steps. Like for example, later on, you're putting up a consonant and region on the file. Maybe you might. There's not going to be any cases for that. But it's what things is happening behind the run command. Oh, sorry. So We should have Java. We can type Java version of Java. Okay, we just running runtime right now. Yeah. So if you go into Oracle, or yeah, or I don't know, Java. So do you guys want to go here? Well, feel free to do that.
Maybe I would.
Sorry, like, and go there. So it's going to be the 8, the version 8, and you're going to select test one. And
I did it right.
Octavia? I was just wanting to know how you're doing. Did you understand the process of you working with the Java compiler command in the terminal? Okay, perfect. I also put a, I think I put it in Dropbox, the reference card. I want to make sure it's there. But that's really actually a good thing to have. Just, I was going to print it off. I can print them off for you guys if you want. But it's basically just a reference to some key items in Java, such as keywords and, let me make sure it's in Dropbox. A lot of times you can find good cheat sheets or reference sheets that are online that'll help you for a language and give you like key points. And that one, I think it's a pretty good one to have certain keywords that you can't use in Java and other information there. So I'm just going to go check my Dropbox. Make sure it's there. Oh no, actually it's not there yet. That's new. What's that?
I use it for the notebook.
Oh, actually, I was going back to it. But I want to put it, in the Dropbox stuff right now. There we go. And just to that one. And okay, should be good. Basically, what that card is, I put it into the Dropbox. If you have Dropbox installed, it'll automatically download into your Dropbox folder. But it's going to have, we're going to go through, as we go through, it's going to list a lot of the things, like we're going to talk about in a minute, keywords, words that you can't use. Really small, you can't really read it from here. But it's basically words that you can't use, certain things that are going to help you just to have on hand and to be easily accessible. But we'll go more detail about that. Just I put it in the Dropbox so you have it on hand. Does everyone get it? Is it in there okay? Did you guys see the file in Dropbox? Yeah, okay. Well, we actually, Greg, you wanted to have it all, okay, so I'll add you and I'll start another time. I think everyone has it. I think he doesn't have any. So let me just do that. But actually, it's Dropbox, so if you're trying to get the file, once you install Dropbox and you add that folder, it's going to go into your folder, and as you always get new files automatically to go in there. Is that working with you, where you're getting the files automatically? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to actually just do the Skype thing so everyone has. For some reason I can't get back to it. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's all right. So if you want to put that context, I can add it too. So basically what we went through, and I kind of really try to show you how the file works, where you have to compile it, and then you compile and you get that class file. And that class file is what would be able to run in every system. If you were actually just working with that text file, it would need the compiler to create that class file. And then you can run that class file just by issuing the name, Java, and the name like hello world. So that class file is a bytecode file. All programming languages require a compiler to compile the source code into machine-level code. Whereas a compiler app like Python, it actually doesn't compile code when you run with Python. It's not like a compile language like Java. Java compiler compiles the source code into bytecode, which are instructions to Java Virtual Machine. JVM, which is short for Java Virtual Machine, executes by interpreting the bytecode, and Java bytecode is machine independent. That means you can compile Java source code on one platform and can transfer the bytecode onto another hardware to execute. So like we did we used Java with the C, javac to create the class file, then we ran the class file with the, so for an exercise, this one we already did, so we can move on. What time is it? That's actually where I was supposed to stop today, but I'm free to continue if that works for, because it's really early. So, is that good? So again, now Java reserved words are words that you can't use in your code because it'll just give you back compile time error. That's basically on the reference sheet. If you get it from Dropbox, I'll have a list of about 50 words, and I'll give you a list of those words. And those words are just where the compiler uses itself, that if you try to use it in your code, they'll think that you mean something else. For example, like string. It thinks that you're trying to work with a string object. You can't go and name your own piece of string. Now, there's different data types for Java. Basically, we'll be working with as a number type integer, but depending on the type you use, there's different ranges. If you look at the list, basically a char is like a character, it's one letter. It represents only a letter. So with Boolean, it represents true or false. Now, again, the byte is going to give you a bigger file size, so you don't really want to use a number format like such as long, a super long number, because it's holding space and making your program bigger. So you want to use something that's smaller. You have to find the perfect range, because if you use something that's too small, your numbers are going to start outputting the wrong number. So you really want to figure out where your number range is in what value and data type you want to use. These over here are the long, the floats and the doubles are going to be with decimals. So if you're working with a money value, or that's when you're going to want to use the float and double. And then an array is another type. One more complicated. That one, you can have an array of characters of different other types. So an array is kind of like, somewhat like a collection. Now, an identifier in Java is going to be like a name. So when you use a variable, it's going to be your identifier. You can take out the name for the identifier, but it's going to be like the name of the method, the class, interface, the variable. Actually, we'll step out here and just go back to our, we'll go back and just use a simple variable as a string type, and we're going to just change the hello world application just so you can create a string and hold hello world, and instead of outputting hello world, output that string. So if you are familiar with what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and just, just do it. I'm going to just write it down real quick. So, for example, right here, instead of outputting hello world, I'm going to store it in the variable. So over here, I'm going to create variable to store string. So it's going to execute the same way. You're going to get the same output. But this time you're just using a variable. You're creating that variable and it's holding that value of hello world. And then it's going to output that information to the console. So we can go back and we can run that in Eclipse. You don't need to do the whole compiler and saving to a text file. And then basically you'll just hit the run command and see that you can output hello world. Thanks to making taxes, we're going to go up.
I think a lot of this begin with gonna do.
Okay.
Very good.
Now I,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
When you actually, that's pretty good. You usually probably do the one of these better than like more, like you say, it's a very big difference. You understand it. You know, you're doing, what is the class definition and public, we're gonna talk about, writing. So it's actually got a public, on side of public class, that's a special method. So you actually, everything, yeah, you're all, it's just something here, right there, you're gonna, once you get in there, you want to create a variable. So actually, you don't create the variable, you're gonna create, you could create your own variable. These two, this line right here, you want to bring in inside. So this is the definition of a class, and over here is the definition of a method. So using the string kind of, you need to take this, and you could, if you were to create a variable here, it would be a variable. But if you would create over here, it would be a variable for just a method. So right here is where you want to be. It's going to become a variable just for the method. Only when the method runs does that variable go into memory and actually work. But it's going to be, you create classes later on, you're going to want variables for the class, not just when the method runs. So right here is where you get this line. Yeah, it should be camel case. So, like, camel case is the first, depending on what the alpha text. You want something informative. I'm gonna actually also, his name, but you want something that's gonna be more like give you a good idea of what the variable is for. And you want to have camel case. Camel case is like a camel back. The first letter is gonna be lowercase, and then the next word, because you don't want any spaces. You're gonna have to have it uppercase. So it creates a camel case. So like alpha text that clearly defines what's going to come out from this going to be alpha text. So that variable is a good name variable, and it follows the camel case. When you're working with classes, they're not going to be camel case. They're going to begin with a capital letter, and that's how you know we're going to a class and a variable. You can actually then you just hit the run. It'll ask you to do one. Don't click the. And then run. You just have it. You actually going to remember the last time you ran. You actually use only error, which is click the actual dot. It's going to just know. So it saves you from having to go to error.
Yeah,
Oh. Oh, yeah. Actually, keep. you're gonna have to jump the whole chapter. Maybe there's the location of where you're gonna have to find that location. Oh, actually, take out the actually the location where you're at. And then you add it to the app. And it is very because it helps it there. If not, it would actually need to be closer. And they don't need to have to. Oh, no. So you could go back into the file and kind of try to run the job app and get it out, and then run job. Okay. Is that pretty good?
You're all good, Octavia? All right, so talking more about the identifier. It's going to be basically the name of the method, a class interface, or a variable. Now they're composed of letters, numbers, the underscore, and then or the number sign. If you don't have one of those to start off with, then it's going to give you compile time error. It can only begin with a letter, the underscore, dollar sign. So if you start off with a number, it's not going to work. You can't start any of your variables with a number. So some examples, my variable, because it contains a space, it wouldn't be valid. The next one, 9 pins, because it starts with a number. Now for A plus C, it has a character in the middle that's not acceptable. Testing 1, 2, 3, unacceptable hyphen, another unacceptable character, and the ampersand, which is not acceptable. But one thing that I didn't mention is that you want it to be informative. So a variable name, you want to kind of tell, or even a method, you want to say what action it's going to perform, or a variable is going to want to say what it's going to hold. Whereas if you just use like a letter, or just kind of something that doesn't give information about it, it's going to be hard for the next person that's trying to read the code to tell them what it's trying to output or what information it's trying to pass along. In Java, a statement instead of 1 or 2 lines, terminated by a semicolon. More or less, it's going to happen to you where you're going to forget a semicolon, and it's not going to run, and it's going to bother you. You're not going to know what it is, but it's going to be something as small as a semicolon or something really small. So it's really important that you include the semicolon where you need it at the end of a statement. For example, integer sum. So sum is a variable that's set as the integer type, and it's going to be equal to the value of whatever number 1 is and number 2. A block is a set of statements enclosed within curly braces. You can nest curly braces, and those are going to be inner blocks. The spaces between the lines don't matter, but they make your code more readable or less readable if there's a lot of space, as well as indentation. That's important too. Some arithmetic operators, which you can perform on either numbers or strings. includes addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulus. What addition is going to do is going to add two numbers of the integer, but if it's a string, it's going to concatenate the two strings together, form a new string. The minus doesn't work on strings, but just will do the same thing for a number, as well as multiplication, division. Modulus, what it does is it basically divides the number and gives you the remainder. Then there's basic assignment operators, the equal to, and then the plus equal to, which just increments that, the variable at the left-hand side, and the decrement. When you're trying to do a comparison of two values, you'll have these different operators of equal, not equal, less than, greater than, less than equal, or greater than equal. Then there's logical operators, meaning one or the other, or both values, or not a certain value. We'll see these at practice, so you'll be able to get an understanding of what they actually do. There's a string value type, which you guys use to the hello world, and basically you want to put those in double quotes. You could use single quotes as well. And the string is an object, it's not a primitive type. Primitive types are like the integer, the double, the float. So it's an actual, has object properties to it. And you can add the string together with a plus operator. Now the following is an example of some strings that are created. The first one just basically creating the string with no value. If you always, especially with Java, you have to instantiate the variable. So if you're going to use it later on, you have to at least say this is going to be a string, and then you can work with it. If you don't instantiate it, you'll get a compile time error. You'll see more of that later. So this string, set it to the text test, create a new string. With the third one, where it says string equals new string, you usually don't use the new string call. That's like a constructor. You don't usually use it because it's basically you add the certain, the quote. You could use it if you wanted to, but most times you won't be seeing people create new strings. And then the third, string 3, string 1 plus string 2. Conditional statement. There's the if statement and the switch statement. Basically, as you're programming, you're going to want to check a certain condition. And if that value of that condition is true, then you want the code inside the block to execute. And if not, maybe an alternate code to execute. And then you can continue on the line of if, else, if, else. Now with the switch, you can provide certain conditions. So if this is the case, if this is the case, and then continue, and if none of those cases, you can supply a default value. So that's what we're going to look at now. So basically, it's a conditional statement, which means multiple conditions that need to be matched. And if none of them, then there's a default case. So for example, in this one, you set a number is equal to 4, and then you're checking that number's value. And if it matches any of the case, like case 1, case 2, case 3, it's going to execute that function. And if none of those are correct or match up, then it's going to do the default. So now we'll go ahead and write a function which takes an integer parameter and prints out the message if the number is greater than 10, otherwise it's going to print if it's smaller than 10. So if you're comfortable, you can go ahead and have a jump start on it, or you can watch me. So we're going to create a new class. And just basically that class is going to hold our new, our function.
So I'm going to call the class parameter functions. Notice I use a capital P because it's a class. And parameter functions. That's pretty much all I could have it generate comments so that I can put up sites for me to add comments. And then I'll just no package. So really all I did was just add the name. Oh, I could have selected public static void main. That option was there. But because I forgot to, I'm going to just type it in. So public static void. And just to like dissect what it's doing, it's making it open as public so it can be called publicly by any other class that interacts with it. We'll talk about static in a little bit. And then void because it doesn't return any value of the function. And main could be, we could actually not call it main, but it's standard to use main. But it does get a string array called arg. And that actually, you can have that change as well. Standard though is to have args and both main be called main. But the fact that it's public is what's going to make it for them to know that that's the main method to execute. So I mean, the first thing you kind of want to do is just run it so you know that it runs. I mean, I don't ever create alternate names for the public method or the argument. Because it's just standard to use main and argument, args. Actually, does even my name work? Oh, my bad. It actually has to be called main. But my args can be different. You'll notice too, if you do something wrong and it's not in the right structure, you're not going to be able to run it as Java application because it's looking for that main function. So although you can't change the name of that, you could change the argument variable. But yeah, you cannot change the name of the main.
People take parameters string arrays and
Yeah.
are what are?
R is just to represent arguments. So this is the basic structure. So when you actually even use the Java compiler and you compile code, and then you actually call if you called it from the command console, you would just call the function and then you supply the argument, and this is the function that would run.
Okay, but it has to be string array.
It does have to be string array, and it has to be called main. It just the args can be something. If you want to call it like parameter, you could. You would access the parameters to certain. We'll talk about how you would access them. But to certain parameters, you would access them. So I'll put back arg so it follows standard. So once you know that it's running and you know you have a skeleton right, you'll go back to, it's kind of nice to start there so you know everything's laid out right. So you're going to continue on to create the function that is going to call, then take a parameter and it's going to check that parameter if it's greater than 10 or less than 10. So this function will be the first thing that executes. Yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah. Okay, let me do that. The option's disabled. Is it okay? I'm going to disconnect with you and just reconnect with you. All right. Be right back. Hey, can you hear me? Perfect. I'm going to add the screen now. And you can get the screen? All right. Perfect. So is everyone doing okay? So now I'll create the function that needs to take the parameter and check if it's a 10 or not. So it's going to take an integer as a parameter into the function. So it's going to be a public method. For now, it needs to follow static because we're going to be calling it from the name static. We'll talk about static later on. But for now, just put the static in. Its return value is not going to be important, but it's going to check the parameter. So we use the name that and kind of it's descriptive of what it's going to do. Takes an integer value, and that's the number passed. So I mean, the first thing is we want to just make sure everything's running correctly. Let's just try to print that number. So I'm going to pass a string saying the number is, and then I'm going to add that number. Now when I run it, it's not going to do anything. It's still going to say hello. Because the first thing it does when it runs, it's going to execute this method and print hello. So we're going to change that by calling the check parameter function. So over here, parameter, and just pass any number you want. So for now, if you just run that, you're going to get it say number is, and that number that you passed.
What we could, if I can work and maybe not like Jackson, so you could have a lot. This is a now. Make the line. Now I have it. And underneath that, we're gonna do the bottom on the last one there. So you'll actually, now you have everything that's actually you. So it's real big to try to get that started, try to checking that. And do we need to find out something bigger than 10 or less than 10? If you want. Yes. And if you want to, maybe on that sheet, the take out. You don't have to. So for you, Sarah, she wants you to check the number. I'm going to do it. You want to make sure that it's matched. So now, let's close the bracket. Please be close the bracket. So that one is the bracket. This is actually this one, which is good. Now we're going to close the other. We'll put the bracket there. Look, the other one. So now this one closes that one, and then this one closes that one. So you're good. You have one area here. But it's there. And once these come down, this isn't part of what you see this, you actually, the reason right here is not happening that's not working. If you actually do this like you want to do a quick fix, oh, create message, check period, because that message you call is not created. You just click on that right there, it's going to help you. Which is, glad as time goes on, so whatever you have in there, as long as you have your errors directly going away, and then something small comes up, it tells you. So now you can do it now. This is easy. This one. It's using the variable I. Do you want to switch I to the past number? Actually, no, you got this whole thing, just the past number. There's I there, just past. And then you try to add it, just from that out, line number is with the I. So you're only missing line number 10. Now, check your now you can see that. Oh, yeah, you can run. Java. You should. You want to do it. Maybe you can.
don't need to.
I don't think so.
Because it's job they do. Right, but then hours, it's not.
Okay.
So we'll see there. But, oh, I guess you're going this entire house.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you understand.
Yeah, I think I was hiding the salt, that's why.
Oh. Because the thing is, if you put 10 in, and all in favor, it's Jack,
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add, is everyone good to that step, like where it just outputs the pass number? How about you? Yeah. The next thing you wanna do is you wanna check that pass number is greater than 10. Or if it's less than 10. So, the way you would do that, that's checking if it's greater than 10, and if it's greater than 10, you're gonna execute this code. Oh, and this is only an if you want to know. If you're doing system out a lot and you don't want to type system.out.print, you can actually do a shortcut and do sys. Oh, what is it? Oh, I know it's fine. Okay, yeah. So if you just do sys out, you can actually get a nice shortcut for it. So I'll do it again. Sys out. And then control and space bar, and I'll fill it all in for you. So I'm going to do that again, see if anyone's catching it. It just makes typing easier if you don't know how to system out. So sys, out, and after you type that, control and space bar, and you'll get a nice little system out. Did everyone get that? So basically over here, this is where we check the parameter. So you pass it into the number type is what the number that you're passing along. So far you just printed out the past number. And now we add the conditional. We check whether the past number is greater than 10. And if it is, we say the number is greater than 10. Then we use the else. And if the case isn't that it's greater than 10, it's going to print out that it's less than 10. Now, if we change the top part to check a different parameter, we're going to start by checking the number 5 to see if it works. Then alternately, we can check a different number, maybe that's greater than 10. You can just copy and paste to change the numbers. So in this example, the main function executes, and it calls this check parameter function twice. The first time with the number 5, the second time with the number 16. So once I run that, I put over here the line to, output some information. Is the 5 greater than 10? Oh, whoops, I did something wrong. If past number is greater than 10, number is greater than 10, else number is less than 10. Oh. Okay, yeah, that's right. Is anyone confused how they feel? Yeah. Okay.
Am I going too fast? I'm going to explain one day go. You could do an else if, but for right now, we'll just do if it's this, and if not, so let's do that. The one thing, you don't need actually straight say. You don't have to be straight online. There. So if it's not number greater than 10, we know the number will be less than 10. So then, you should run. All right. What you do over here is you can copy and paste it, run function right one. So you do a check number parameter, and then you put it 200 and then run view again, copy that line. And then now paste underneath it. And then natural. And now change the number. You can actually keep function more than that. The nice thing about making functions is you can redo the same thing over and over and over. Now, when you put the number 10, what happens when you try to do something with number 10? Which is try to put it with 10. That's not really that. Do you know how you would change that to make that T-Stuffy? I'll let you say that. I'll set up. Yeah. What here, you lost the line, so you lost that line. So what you should do, like in your, you just handle it from the first error and then move on from that. And actually click back. It might help you out. So like it's telling you create the method this. So when your layout, if things are incorrect, it'll actually create that. And if you can see that it doesn't even let you undo it. But it'll actually now create the method there that's not there. And if you notice that maybe your all the time your approach is kind of making it confusing, you could also, once you get them in line and have enough that the and this is going to suck out. But okay, we got this. Once that. Where is that? Motion number 9. Okay. Oh, because there's no function. It can't be called there. We'll cut that out. And then this is the body shape. Oh, we changed it to number, but now inside here, it means that now it's gonna execute that. This over here. Now the arrows are on. But the only thing is our implementation coming. So what we might want to do is edit. And then format button. Oh. So yeah, so now you have a check there here, there's a column 5, you're passing in 5 here and saying, if that's this thing you might want to have before you pass it along. For example, here you say, okay, is 5 greater than 10? And then now we call a function you pass 5. And then inside here, the first thing it does is oh no. Oh.
Oh, see if you take people. Out, P, and then you just follow the one. So it helps you along with the kind of cheesy one. And so now we just pass, we can see what the problem is. You don't have to use pass number, I use pass number, because it's not restricted. But you just pass that I right there. So then after that, you would then in there, you would do the check condition, where you check whether this number that's passed is greater than 10. So if I in your case greater than 10. So here's where you're going to so greater than 10. Greater than so that's the step. And then I already checked here, maybe less than 10. I don't know that. If it's not greater than 10, then it's probably so your application feature itself. All right, now all you want to do here is copy the check the reading, check the number greater than 10, the number less than 10, and the number is 2. Let me check to see if you check to see if yeah. You know, the best thing is you actually Google it. You Google how
Yeah, I have online, I have online, yeah, I just, I have an idea, so I received number, I received. Yeah. Yeah, no problem.
You want to know you want to switch you want to pass the number, and whatever the number of months is, 1 to 12, is going to print on the January, February, March. But you're on the right track. What you could add is there, try number less instead of higher than. They're both higher than. You want to try adding
I'll let you think about it. That's right. So in there, you know, the first one, that's what regular ritual is that. But what's gonna happen after 10, what's gonna happen, it's gonna be this projected equal greater. You don't want to check the equal. You can do it a different way. You can check this equal to exactly 10, and it's not equal to 10, check this greater than 10, then if it's not greater than 10, you check. Or it's I think you're on break. You understand what's going on here, right? It's very, have all the code for you. Many kids know that anyway, you know, get the feel right.
A cool feature is to, if you go in the file, if you go to source and you format, it'll help clear up where you got your indentations and make sure it's nicely formatted. So it'll clean it all up. So if it's all messed up, your indentations are kind of off, your brackets might be a little to the right, you know, they don't look clean. You'd usually go to sort and then just format. Format. And through preferences, you can, oops, sorry. How come that didn't work? Sorry. There you go. Through preferences, you can change the way that's going to be formatted. But for now, that defaults should work pretty well. So you did whether the number was less than 5, or the number is greater than, less than 10, greater than 10, or if it's equal to 10.
So if you keep the form, how about if you do the form of element?
Then it will just format that specific element. Like let's say this, and we have this one selected, and we go to source, format element, it'll format that whole method call. Or let's say this one. It formatted this one, and it didn't format over here. So this still So basically, so you're checking to see if less than 10, you're checking to see if it's greater than a number that's greater than 10, but if it's equal to 10, you also, so you, instead of originally having the first check if the number is greater than 10, instead of just saying else, you would do an else if, and check if it was less than 10. And then you could just do an else, because if it's not greater than 10 or not less than 10, it must be equal to 10. So you could just do an else, or you can do an else if the number is equal to 10. Both of those would work. Greater than 10, number is less than 10, greater than 10. How's everyone doing? Pretty good overall? Anything too confusing? So the next exercise is going to be if using a switch statement to be able to print the month of the current month. That's going to be a little hard. We don't know that. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You just can't use an object. Like yeah, string. Yeah. How are you doing, Octavia? Really well? You don't have much questions. All right, did you get a head start on the switch statement? Yes. All 12 months. So pretty much set an integer 1 to 12, and then check that integer, and depending on what that integer is, output the month. What's that? You don't really have to. You could, just to get the use to creating classes. Or you can just add a function inside. So we'll do it as adding a function, and then kind of work with what we have so we can know how to work with what we have. So the new function over here, we'll get it started by, actually, you know what's neat is if you actually go here and you say check month, and then you're going to check the month, current month, or past month. Okay, now that's going to execute the function check month, and it's going to check parameter month will do. Check parameter month, and it's going to check the past month, and it's going to execute that function. So you'll notice that we have errors. So I'm going to add a little string there to say, we'll check that 2 is February. So that's what we're going to do. Later on, we're going to start actually using JUnit, and when we create test cases, they're going to actually be test cases. They'll be separated from the code. But just to get you a feel for the classes and the different the way it works, we're going to just start by this. So I pretty much sent a system out print and said, check that 2 is February. So you guys should all be fine with sending that one. Now this one, it's going to have an error because we never had a past month. So if you just type check parameter month and then past month, I want to kind of show you how you can use Eclipse to help you along the way. So let me know where everyone's at that point.
So you just can hear out number is 10, or you can use out if past number is equal. You actually took that. You could have here, it would be the same. Because you basically see your I here, you need to have 5. But okay, if you actually right click on here, you go to the you go to rename, and you want to rename that I, let's say, I'm going to show this to everyone later, but it's going to change it. And you enter. Yeah. So just to see what so after that, write that line, set parameter month and past month. You're supposed to have the year. This one is because it's not an option. And that is perfect. Wait a minute. All right. Are you going to pursue?
Okay, just all I wanted to show you in this is that you have the past month and it's underlined, showing as an error. So as using Eclipse, when you highlight on it, you should get ways to fix it. And it says there's 4 quick fixes for this. You can create the variable past month, create a field past month, and then again create a parameter past month, or create a constant past month. What it's kind of trying to tell you, you can create the variable past month. Now you can go about doing it different ways. Depending on where you create it, it would be a different variable. We'll talk more about that later, but if you add it at this level, it'd be like a class variable. If you add it at this level, it'd be a function local variable. What we'll do is we'll just fix that one error because we saw what the error was. We must have not instantiated it. So we need to create that. So if you actually create the local variable past month and select that, it's going to fix it for you. The only thing is it's going to make it a past month is going to be an object. So if we go ahead and change that to int, now past month is going to be a number. So you could either follow along with the auto correction, the quick fix, or you can just type in ensure past month. But I mean, the main goal of that was to show you that using the IDE, it can help you along when you have errors. So again, I have it selected, and either I select one of these or I go to the quick fix all the way to the left, select that, and it'll tell me what things I can do, and I select the one I want to do, which I want to create the local variable past month. And then it creates the past month, and now I'm going to change it to an integer type. Everyone got that? They're doing good. So the next thing we get another error now is to check parameter month. So we would do the same process, but this time it's giving us the options of it. It's giving the option to change it to a different method that seems pretty close to what it is, which is not what we want to do. We want to create the method. So by just selecting create method, that we can actually have it automatically insert the method, the name, and the pass parameter type. So it saves us from having to type that whole couple 2 lines. So again, now it's telling us the check parameter month method doesn't exist. So we go to create method. So automatically it creates the method for us and gives us the whole little structure that we need to create that method. So it saves us from having to type that whole method out. And if we want to just get a head start by printing out what that pass method is, that pass method is. You also want to, after you instantiate it, you also want to set the value of 2. And then do that past month. And we're just for now, we're just going to say what the current month is. So if you want to comment out the other lines that you had, this time maybe using a different type of comment, which is the /**, you can comment all that code that you don't want to run. And then just run, check that 2 is February, create the integer past month equal to 2, and then check parameter month the past month. And it should run out past month is whatever the month you passed, for example, 2. So if I run that, I should get, check that 2 is February, past month is 2. I'm going to maximize that. Another cool thing, if you double click the tab, it'll actually take up the whole space for any tab that is the console.
have to make a lot. Where the backslash is the backslash with a line comment, backslash is is I put private because like automatically had it right to me. It does private automatically because it's default, makes it private. The fact that usually you should always have public, as long as, you should actually have it private as you can make it, so for security reasons. For now, just leaving everything public as a default. So now we're worried about security at the moment, but it creates issues when you're trying to access certain functions. So in this place right here, you're gonna, because it's one function here, so this is one function. Actually, this is the function here. Oh, this is gonna be, this is another function, right? So this is actually, you know what, yeah, here, yeah, so the check, one's gonna be check one here, and then the other one's check pairing. Oh, yeah, which is make it easy. So here's the check pairing, which is the check. Number. It gives me here now. Oh, actually, we're back. Do you remember how to change? Yes. We'll be back here. This over here is probably getting now we have to check not parameter and check parameter. So, so here's one. This one actually we're gonna do it here. We're gonna do it. This right here is it's gonna be your first thing that the application. So the way it works is the first thing the application does when it runs the public method. So this is the method X. Never executes these unless these are called. So in this aspect, that runs right there, it does this, but we don't want to do any of those. We're going to comment those out. Here. So now it's not going to actually go to just run it, it's not going to run anything. But now if you go over here and say, oh, we want to execute the next method, it will check number 2 February. So it ensures pass month equals 2, and now we actually call check number. Check. It might be difficult. Yeah. The important part is that it matches, but you know we'll do it with correct match that, so we don't get confused. Check 1 centimeter, and then we're gonna put half. That can call it. And this is not, this is going to be now. And then you divide. So this is going to check the parameter, and now fix the nut and enable. You have check parameter 1. So over here, check on parameter, right click, sort, refactor, rename, and then check here. Actually, I like check once. Check once. Oh no, check parameter. Yeah, he's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. This is why yeah, and a lot of times if you get the name wrong, what it does is it does it, you don't know what the problem is. Yeah. Like one thing, like right here, if you don't set this equal to 2, and you just have this, it won't even run. You have to put it on. It's a lot more strict than Python. Actually, if you actually create the Python, it's actually a lot easier to Rails code for than it is to it has to be strict. So over here we have, we want to go ahead and change, like, I'm going to do it here. So we have check month parameter, and then we're going to, that's check month parameter. So this one should be check value parameter. So we can select what we need, and we're going to change it to value parameter, because it's a value, check the value higher than 10. Sure. So add changes over. Okay, so if you run that, it's going to say check that if you February, just out 2 for now, but now this is where you're going to want to work in there. You're going to want to put a switch statement. So that's what we're going to do next. You can try it on your own, maybe you may want to. Oh, wait. This is the only Java. If you didn't have a rate, you would continue on including, and it wouldn't break that. It's good that you have rates there, like, which is by infinite, but there's an instance in the next one is true. Sometimes it's the value of the next one. If the next one is true as well, the next 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4 comes back. Just so like you know, you get yourself a right card. But it doesn't matter, it doesn't change anything, but it's good to know. Yeah, like anything else. You actually did include the break, and for some reason, if you put like, if the switch matches anyone, we go through and actually have each one. So it might take one might be true, so X2 and K2, that's true as well, X2 is 2 as well. So when you have a weighted X2, that is switch state. Just so like you know.
So if we have break, just it's like this, like, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just fixing it.
Yeah, cut there and.
Yeah, and it's up there, but because what happens is the case, the next case matches as well as the first case, they'll choose the optionality of the case and the second case.
Well, we have to.
So it's good to have a break. But sometimes you don't want a break, you want it to execute all three. It's going to be like, in the case that it's, a big number, do this. In the case that it's an even number, do this. We want it to happen both for a big number and an even number. So you want it to match them.
If we have only 12 variables, and instead of trying to bind or show any other primitive which has.
We're optimizing that thing. Yeah, I can do that. We're just using analysis so we can get the hang of it. But if you're actually creating you could end up, you could use these constants too. And in that case, you have strings on.
If you don't want to sort of go in that way, right, and you have to.
Yeah, you analyze what and see what your requirements are. And you need to be, at the same time too, depending on what you want, like, if it's even gonna matter, like, if that's actually not gonna change super, and depending on how you're performing your application, and maybe the optimization isn't even important that has a low amount, it's always good to follow that basic, but it might not be viable to them, to the one thing you go. I mean, because maybe later on, maybe that value too, there's a reason that you, another reason to use that as an integer somewhere too, there's a lot of it. Yeah, it's just kind of yeah, but then you're kind of like, that's the condition is kind of the way it is. If we get to check the value of it and say if you can actually change the whole thing to itself. They kind of take off. Make a cleaner version of one take off. Very good. I'm gonna save myself from typing all that. So basically, that's how the one thing I was showing this, I think I showed this to how people, but a lot of times if you have a name and you want to, let's just do one name. Let me just change that. A lot of times if you have a certain variable and you want to change its name, but there's so many instances of it and you don't want to go through and change each individual name, or if you're trying to optimize your code and make it clear in reading, like for example, let's say this month name. I don't think it's clear enough to say month name, so I want to change it. I would actually go to, if I right click on that and I go to, if I go to refactor, it's going to actually refactor that name in the whole program. So if you go to refactor and rename, and you change the name to current month, for example, CUR month, if you notice it changed the name everywhere. So let me undo that and just show you again. So if you see all below, it's current month, So I right-click, refactor, and rename, and I change it to current month. Oh. I did it that way, but so
me undo that. Right click, refactor, rename, and current month, and it changes everywhere. And then change. So in reading what I'm actually doing here, I'm going to just read it step by step. First, I create a string variable to hold the current month. And now that there's no value to that, but I'm just declaring that it's a string, and it's going to be called current month. Now, when I set that, it's going to be based on the past number to that function. So based on what that number is, I'm going to print off a different month. If that past number is a 1, I'm going to set the current month to January. And then I'm going to continue on based on what that current month is. It's kind of using an if else over and over, but it's a lot cleaner way to do it. So in the case that it's a 1, I'll use a colon, and then the current month is going to be equal to January. And then I'll break out of that. I'll continue to do that for each one and go to all the months, unless it's not a valid month. And then I'll say it's an invalid month. Maybe they passed the number 13. There's no existence of the number 13 month. So that's kind of basically how the structure would work, with the default being if that number isn't equal to either 1, 2, 3, 0 to 12. At the end of this whole switch, I'm going to then print out the current month. What's that?
Default is like.
Exactly, like an L. Only thing I want to say is if the breaks are basically to say come out of this switch statement. If you weren't going to include the break, then it would continue on the next case. For this instance, the case isn't going to be equal to 1 and 5, so it doesn't really matter whether we use breaks or not. But if it was sometime, maybe you're checking if the value using constant, if you're checking if in that one case and another case, and the first case was true, and the second case was true, then it actually executes both cases if there was no break. Or sometimes that's what you're going to want, depending on if you want to check more than one case and it to give you output based on more than one case, you would use the break or not. It's good for them to use the break when it's more so than not, unless you explicitly want it to be more than one situation. How's everyone with that, though? A good understanding of that? It's a lot of information for, I think, 4 hours. How are you doing? Oh, sir, Octavia? How are you doing? Yes. Yeah, basically, like over here, it's past month. So here it should be past month as well, where I have past month a number. So if I actually right-click and refactor that and rename, I'm going to do past month. So, and then it's going to actually rename the other situations too. And that way, maybe it's a little more clear. And so this function pretty much is taking that integer value, it's going to be an integer value, and whatever month that is from a number 1 to 12. And then come here, it's going to create a variable for the current month, but not to any value of it, but say it's going to be a string. Then based on what the switch statement past month integer value is, it's going to check the case of if it's equal to 1, and then say January. If it's equal to 2, February, all the way up to the 12, and then if it's none of those, maybe let's say 13, it'll be an invalid month number. What's that, sir? Basically what is happening right here is past this number 2. So I'm setting the value for past month of 2. And then when this function executes, it's going to take this right here, and it's going to take it in as a number, and then basically evaluate what that number is. And depending on the case, correcting what you said, and depending on the case, it's going to execute the different line. So those numbers are, it's exactly what you said. Could it be alphabetical? Like, depending if it's variable, like right now it's their values as integer values. But if it was actually going to be like, you can create constants and then check the constant value, like a variable that holds a string, and then depending on what that string variable is. Yeah, it's an alternative to using, a lot of times, some people don't really use switch statements so often. A lot of times they're using else if, else if. You'll find a rare case when maybe it's just easier and more clean to use a switch statement. Yeah, it looks clean and tidy. So for next time, we're just going to review everything. We actually got pretty advanced for this class. Like I think we did two sessions in one. So I mean, you guys are pretty good. So I think we'll just review everything too next class, and then get a head start on the next steps. But I hope I didn't confuse most of you guys. Like how? What's that? Yeah. We'll throw in some stuff when we start class, and we'll give you the. Now you can practice the code that's there. I'm gonna put this stuff in Dropbox. And then we'll just get some other exercises for you to come in and start on to see where you're at. So you get 2 days to practice out. Yeah, I think we're good for the day. It's no problem. It was fun. We had a lot of fun. It's actually my first time like teaching, so it's really exciting and fun. I did, thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. And Ian, feel free to email if you have any questions or if you need any help with anything. What's that? Yeah, like for sure. Yeah. Actually, I like to set up like a website too and put like information there and stuff and kind of, yeah. Like, yeah, I'm going to go for the 4 weeks, and then Selenium is going to be where Lisa takes over and does that. I mean, eventually maybe one day I'll take that over too. But it's all exciting stuff. I like the. No, I'm a developer. So I mean, the most I get in the QA is like do JUnit tests and stuff. And I make sure my stuff is like. Yeah. So like, well, when you're a developer, you have to add a good amount for quality assurance. You have to add your JUnit tests and add those tests in because you get those certain cases where, especially like for number types, if you have integer and double, and you might not even notice that there's like when you're trying like a really high number when that could be a number that's supplied that it's not in the range and the number is like understood differently and it causes quite an issue.
I was a computer science degree and I actually worked for 2 years already. I actually don't understand anything over here, however, so I would like to learn this stuff.
Oh, really? That's interesting. That I was surprised that.
Yeah. Right.
That's why you're pretty quick and. Well, you're going to be able to help out a lot of people too. I guess there's not on the Dropbox. The files are going to be there, and you're probably already caught up pretty. Yeah, I think you're pretty equal now and stuff. But you'll be able to help everyone else in the class. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's right. Once finish this start is like easy to get higher or
It's in the range of like QA and they set you up there where you have like your portfolio and your pieces that you can work with to so they kind of help open the door to find those positions and stuff. So I mean, even if you do find that you're getting this information quickly, we can maybe have projects where, just to be able to get your portfolio up and stuff.
I think there was RE.
Yeah, I'm not actually I just took out this teaching last week and stuff, so I'm not familiar with the last class and how they have the portfolio showing and stuff yet.
Yeah, I think there's a meetup RE.
Can you guys attend and stuff? Oh, okay, that sounds really. Let me know how it is.
I might be able to find a programming for.
A good way is just look up like once if you put like your website and show kind of pieces that you work on and just put up ads too and on a lot of different places. Yeah, this is the place to find those.
Problem is that, I have some creative stuff and the little job of putting them together and combine selling. I mean, predicting use cases or finding such data to use for your automation. Do we do here, the scenarios or other implementations at all?
More QA. Scenarios are more QA.
Yes, scenarios, because without scenarios, automation scenarios is hard to learn. We have no.
Yeah.
So it's more
Exactly.
like flexibility.
Yeah, Selenium is going to be the last 2 weeks where you create those automations and stuff.
And still they can provide some additional exercises and the tables and other.
Yeah, I mean, really, we're open. Like, it's your classroom. So if there's something you want to do, or you guys are the direction. So just let me know and figure out what kind of area you guys want to go in and stuff. You do have an outline of everything that we're going to go through, and like today, you guys actually did a great job. Like, you really advanced for the first class. So I mean, no one even needs that. Like, most of the time, just be setting up people's environment stuff, and your environments are pretty good to go. So I mean, any extra time stuff. But yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm starting this book, but I want to prioritize it to, depends on our class year. So I will finish this book.
By next class?
Eventually. No, but just I want to prioritize it so I can, go parallel with your medical here. So.
Okay.
So do you have anything planned?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't know if you've done it. I don't think did you have there was a little, like, booklet, I think, that they gave you where you, like, kind of all of, like, the fees and stuff?
Yeah.
I think it actually has the, what actual course, what we'll be doing, and it breaks it down to what class and stuff. And actually, if you have,
I saw it online.
Oh yeah, actually it's online too. That's true. That if you see what that is, but all those, too, like I'll show you too that
But for instance, it's after 50th class, it says that there will be some HTML or other stuff. So
yeah.
you will teach.
That's me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm the HTML. Like I'm pretty good at the HTML.
Okay, yeah, I bet.
Okay.
Yeah, because you did that.
Yeah, I do I'm not so familiar with Selenium. I'm sure it's not something that I can't pick up pretty, because I'm used to
Yeah,
JUnit and stuff.
so you are the master of XPath and all CSS stuff.
Yeah. Actually,
okay,
you know
you
what?
are the guy.
If, one thing that's really interesting is if you've ever, and something I even wanted to show today is there's actually Cloud 9 is like you actually get a whole environment in the cloud, and if you work with Node and you work with HTML and CSS, and you work with Java. But it's something that maybe I can even get the information together and give you guys to have, because it's a nice, you have actually your whole development in the cloud, so you log into your browser, and if you set it up, and you have this whole environment set up, and then when you work for another project, it's different.
like Postlabs or something like that? Do you
Let me actually show you what it is. So it's cloud9.io, and you can work in different types of projects. But see, this is the Cloud 9, and if you actually, I'm going to sign in, think of a project I'm working on right now. Well, actually, I don't remember the username.
Okay, no problem.
But let me show, I want to show you what it looks like. Or maybe I can use my, I don't know, this one.
Do you have GitHub account? Or sure you have, I guess.
Yes, I do. Just almost like stuff, I was always private repository, so I don't have a public one that really has all
Okay,
the stuff and
okay.
everything. But I'm gonna get that all together.
Okay.
I don't actually, because I use passwords.
It's okay, so.
But this is
next
really
time
neat. Actually, if I go to the main, you can kind of see what, how it, like, they have a nice little, so it's actually, everything's in the cloud for you, and you can work with HTML and JavaScript and stuff, and it does it, your whole environment is there in the cloud, and it's pretty neat in that aspect, but you can work with, like, Sass, and, like, where Sass is something that works with your, like, CSS, so you can stick variables into your CSS and stuff, like, which is neat, because then when you work on a different, you can actually hold variables for certain values of colors and stuff, and then work with the next one and have, but you can add certain frameworks using like Node, if you, I don't know if you ever heard of Node.
Yeah,
so you use the, you use the document to insert, more functionality and stuff. And this thing right here, you can actually set up the whole environment with Node and all your backend and stuff, and just kind of have the whole different, and then when you go log in, your whole computer is just sitting there with the stuff, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything.
So you are also familiar with the web application and other stuff. So after taking this class, which kind of knowledge will support our skill set best? So I'm thinking of taking more HTML or JavaScript or other stuff. I know.
There's a lot of different areas you can go. So there's a lot of different areas. So it really.
We all come from training each other. Implement something from HTML, here, all together. I think it's the main one, Java.
Like JavaScript's pretty big. Like I remember like 10 years ago when I was working with it, it was like JavaScript wasn't that like, it was just gonna die out because it's not strict and it's so loose and like it's just.
Java is like a pain in finding just hold everything.
Because they can just hold functions, hold objects of functions. It's just like.
JavaScript is
complicated.
Getting hot just last a few years.
Because 10 years ago it was there, it just wasn't so hot, and now it's like really, really hot. And that's actually, that's pretty, and just because these frameworks, AngularJS and like the different frameworks that are out there, there's like a good amount of them, and they're really, really popular, especially with Swift. One thing that's nice is from Canada, like Canada was like, coming here, it's like things advance a little bit, like there's more of the newer technologies here. When we're in Canada, it's like, so it's really cool to. Exactly. That's why I came here. Like, but yeah, feel free to email me if you have any questions, or if you want any, information like that. Oh, for you. Just means you're gonna have to do.
Pretty flexible,
You forgot to put the box.
Yeah, here the semicolon is like.
Here, you just forgot.
Well, you know what? So if you imagine working at just Sublime and having to hard code and all stuff, it can get really annoying. Just when you're creating those, at least the clip helps you along the way, and like that's why like I'm trying to show you the quick fix option. It helps you a lot because you just. Okay.
I like it. The work that you're working maintaining and put by yourself. But I think Remind is much easier because if you forgot to put something, they collapse for yourself and you don't have to do it. Here you want to do it over. This is okay.
Oh, good.
Remind is not free. Yeah, really?
Are you still there, Octavia? So how'd everything go for the day? You guys have a great night. And see you after tomorrow? Thank you. You guys are a great class. Are you there? I was going to ask you though real quick, how was the whole Skype experience? Is there anything that maybe you can point out that you might like better or change things up to make it easier? Okay, that sounds pretty good.
Well, it's nice getting to know you, and let's practice on that stuff, and then come next Wednesday. I think we're gonna start out with just trying to work on some more exercises. All right, have yourself a good night.
Goodbye.